Well, that would have to go back to the very early days, back in the early 80s when the company was struggling to survive. And probably one of the most difficult things that I had to do as because I was running the what we called the industrial division is go to very long tenured employees and tell them that they were fired, that we had to let them go because the business could no longer support keeping them around. And these are employees that were 20 plus years with the company, very loyal, 100% Wyo-Ben. Though that would be one of the most difficult things that I ever had to do, and it was very early on in my career at Wyo-Ben. Well, what weighs on me most is that I don't think we have yet realized our full potential in terms of what this company can be. And we've got to be something more than just a base material supplier. If we're a base material supplier, you're like a bottle in the ocean riding the waves. You don't have any control over your direction, and you may be high one day and you're in the trough the next. So even though that's the nature of our commodity, our challenge is how do we create more value out of this base material and do things with it that are more geared towards the end user and creates more profitability for the company. I've always felt that this company should be a $100 million revenue company. And we've had years where we've been on that trajectory. And then we get a slowdown in the economy and one of our markets goes away and wow, now we're in the trough again. So I believe that we can still achieve that $100 million goal by doing the things that we are accomplishing with the new Wyo-Ben Pet division. And we can't just stop with Wyo-Ben Pet. We got to figure out the next best thing for Wyo-Ben that continues to drive our growth. Well, one of the biggest lessons learned from the 80s, one of the biggest lessons that I learned was that we must be diversified. We were not diversified at all. We thought we were because we had steel and we had oil. Well, guess what? Both of those are linked pretty close and they both went down in the early 80s. So diversification of your product offerings is so important. And we think that today we're in a good spot we have cat litter, which is very much shielded from cyclical economic things. And we still have the oil business, we still have the steel business, and we know those have cycles. We know that they're going to have good years and bad years. But it's all about putting together in the right proportions those markets that aren't going to change with cycles, or those markets that may have a different cycle than one of your other portfolio markets. So on average, year after year, you're pretty constant. That's where we need to be. That's where we are today. We've achieved that. And now we just have to build on that. We have to continue to bolt on things to this company that drive revenue, but drive it in a way that we're not exposing ourselves again to the cycles that exist in in certain commodity plays in the market. We manufacture drilling mud, and drilling mud is used in drilling an oil and or gas well vertically. So they use our product if they are vertically drilling to whatever depth they need to go to. Fracking is a method that is used in horizontal directional drilling, where they will go vertical and then horizontal. And then after the hole is drilled, they'll do something called fracking, where they open up the oil-bearing deposit so that it can flow and they can collect it. So Wyo-Ben really has nothing to do with the fracking part of the development of an oil well. We may have something to do with drilling the vertical that ultimately ends up being a horizontal well, but ours is, for the most part, all vertical. Well, I think the future of Wyo-Ben, it's up to us. We're in a terrific position. We're financially healthy. We have brought online Wyo-Ben Pet, which will provide significant revenue growth and profitability. The foundation of this business is very strong. And I think the future will be one where we continue to add business segments. It may be bentonite related, it may not. We continue to grow. I think that we may have some strategic partnering in our future. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are giving up ownership, that we are abandoning this family enterprise. But moreover, we're finding a very strategic partner. It could be something related to resources, for example, that significantly enhances the amount of bentonite resource that we have. Or it may be something that is market driven, where through a joint venture or a merger, we're now able to capture a much more significant market and grow our revenue. It's difficult sitting here today to paint a picture of what those relationships might be. And I think there's kind of a broad spectrum there. But I believe that the company will continue to morph itself into something bigger, something that goes beyond just the base bentonite business that we're in today. We very well could have a partner in our business, whether that was a minority partner or a majority. I think that one of our goals is to continue to provide the liquidity to our shareholders and the value to our shareholders that they want and that the company owes them. Our shareholders have been very patient over the years as the company has attempted to grow in very difficult times. So one of our strategies is to get liquidity to our shareholders. How that comes about can be a variety of ways. It can come from some strategic partnering, or it may come from just value created in the business. I think that whether or not we continue to be family managed is a question. Today, there is no next generation that is being groomed to manage the company. All of the family members in the generation below me are very involved in things that they're already doing. And I don't believe, unless unless we're surprised, I don't believe there's anybody that will come forward in the next generation that says, I would like to take on a leadership role in Wyo-Ben. So that very well could lead us to a family owned, a family governed, but a professionally managed family business in the future. And that's fine. I think a family business, and there are great examples of very strong family businesses, and there are examples of family businesses that were strong but are no longer strong. And I think the essence of a very strong family business is that there is a very core family culture. There is a gathering around some roots that were created by the founders. And the family holds those cultures, beliefs, roots. They're very important to the family. And if the family can gather around that and grow the tree, it's a very strong tree. What happens with family businesses that fail is you may start with that, but that tree starts to separate. And we've all seen trees that may have 2 or 3 branches, right? And those are the ones that you get a big, strong headwind, something happens. Wyo-Ben has, because we started with Rockwood Brown Sr., and because we started with the 4 family, the 4 siblings of Rockwood Brown Sr., and all the generations that have evolved from that, we look at this great thing that we have that started 70 years ago. And I think all of us have this real warm feeling that this is something of value. It's something that we need to preserve. We need to nurture, and we need to make stronger. Now, that's the heirloom side of a family business. There's always the investment side of a family business. There was money invested originally, and even though many of the shareholders may have not invested any of their own money, they received some ownership, and they have invested that. They've left that in the business and invested that for a variety of reasons. But we talk about this spectrum of where does a shareholder's wish and needs sit between heirloom and investment. And there are some that will lean to either side. But I think the reason that our family business is so strong, that we tend to move towards that center, where both of those are very important to us, and we want to keep the family going. We want to keep this enterprise going. And we want to do it not only for the legacy of Rockwood Brown Sr. and Keith and Neil and Rocky and Barbara, but we want to do it for all of the employees that have been involved in the company and still are involved in the company. So we have that going for us, I believe. And that is going to be the advantage that our family business has in any hope of moving to a next generation, is that we have this core belief that we have something good. The company was organized originally as a partnership. In 1964, that changed to a corporation. And the corporation has issues shares. Every share that was issued when it was formed was a voting share. We called those A shares. During the 80s when we were struggling to stay alive. The leadership of the company made a decision to issue more shares. And these were non-voting shares, and they were issued to key management under the premise that if you can bring this company out of the trough and we survive, you receive as some compensation these shares, these B shares, these non-voting shares. And of course that happened. So in the 90s, and the company was doing well. It was now creating positive equity. There was more interest in the company from the shareholders. We were starting to look at how do we govern our company differently? How do we become more professional? And it was a focus, I actually have something of value. And it's an investment. So how do I nurture this investment? And it was at that point where we allowed some redemptions. We had the capability to do redemptions. And there were some shareholders early on that decided I would like to redeem part of my shares. The company was able to set aside a pool of money and do that. Where the company made a mistake was that it didn't require a pro rata redemption of voting shares and non-voting shares. We actually allowed the redemption of just non-voting shares. And over a number of redemptions, what evolved was an imbalance of the ownership in the company versus the voting power for that shareholder or family branch, or however you want to look at it. And it became so significant. And the concern was that we may be in a situation going forward, we have to make strategic decisions as to a partner. We may, and our directors may have to make a decision about a significant investment. And we've got this disparity now with shareholders having a much lesser ownership versus their voting power to control the company. And the company decided that they had to correct that. And we did that by making B shares voting shares. We gave B shares voting rights. So now it made no difference. If you had A shares or B shares, they were the same. They were valued no differently, and you could vote. And what happened, you had some shareholders that diminished their voting power. It didn't diminish their ownership, but it diminished their voting power. That created a conflict. It is something called a dissenter's rights case that evolved from that, and we did go to court with that. It went to the Montana Supreme Court, and it was resolved that one shareholder in particular, the company needed what was required to buy that shareholder out. The others that were party to that, the company did not have to buy them out. That is behind us. I think that we now, going back to how strong this family is, I believe that we're all focused on one thing.